Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so here we go. Um, this is gonna be my guide to tanking with the Sith Assassin class, and tanking in general. So a lot of people actually have been asking me in PvP war zones and even in dungeons, how am I tanking with this spec for my Sith Assassin. So as we come over here to the dummy, so I can show you guys. Um, Here we go. Now, so there's a couple of things to take in when it comes to. Oh, just I almost forgot. Here's a little reminder. Like and subscribe. You know, if you like what you see, I'm gonna have guides coming out for each one of the classes that I play a lot of, and I feel like you know, have a guide for. Now that that's out of the way, let's start this guide. Now, by the way, if anyone is wondering where I am at this moment, I am on the Ziost Shadow, which is this ship over here, on the bridge deck. This is where you can find little practice dummies to hit. So, back to tanking now. So here we go. So now, what this guide is going to cover is tanking specifically with the Sith Assassin class, but also rules of tanking as a whole. Now, I'm someone who is a hardcore PvPer and does a lot of PvE on the side as well in this MMO. I run raids, I run all that stuff, and with this character I've really started to get into raiding, and people have been asking me how I've been tanking. So let's take a look at the gear, first of all, that I'm in. Now, I got the little costume on. Ignore how my character looks because these are all cartel market items, so your character won't look like this with the actual gear set, but the names for the stuff will still be the same. As you can see, I'm in my tank PvP gear, and this is going to so this the first part of my guide. I'll be talking about PvP tanking and then PvE and how are they different in this game. So for starters, this tank here is got the there you go, Cynosure, if that's how you say it, Survivor's Shield. So if you go to the PvP vendor, you want to get the Survivor gear. That's basically the tank gear for the game, for this class. You have to go to each class, has its own vendor, and you go there. And to get all the armor at one go, it's about 4,500 comms. Okay, so that's the gear that we're in. So if we take a look at some of the mods here, I actually have my gear augmented. So when you first get your gear, this is for totally new people as well, you're only going to get these 4 slots. One's a die, and then the rest are all stats. And then you see I have an endurance augment here, fortitude augment 40. Now, let's get into this. So, the main thing with the gear here is, there's about 3 ways tanks usually go. They either go, actually 4, but the 4th one's kind of iffy, and I'll tell you why in a second. The main 3 ways, though, is the various types of damage dealing. When I say damage dealing, I mean actually dealing with damage when you're being hit. And there's various ways that this works. And for those of you who know, this is a post 4.0. So that means everybody has a base of accuracy of 100. But guess what? Tanks, in their spec, have a stance for tanking called Dark Charge. Now this is the main stance if you're tanking as a Sin you want to be in. And as you can see in the corner there, melee attacks have a chance to deal additional internal damage, generate threat, all that. And then armor rating, shield chance, threat generation, accuracy are increased. So every tank has a base, I believe, of 100%. So that gets added on to that 100% anyway that they already had. So we do a lot. Tanks do a lot of damage in a weird way. They penetrate armor, they ignore armor. Of course they're not going to burst like a DPS, but they're still ignoring armor at all times, and that's something to keep in mind in this. I got my bonus damage. I got a few power buffs, but I think I'm going to get rid of them soon, and I'll tell you about that 4th way that I tried, and I didn't think it was that great. 20% chance of crit, not a big deal. 51% crit multiplier, it's not a really big deal. Critting is not your main thing. That's not what you should be focused on as a tank. Now, to the 3 defensive stats that help. shield absorption, shield chance, and defense chance. Okay, now as you can see, these are 30%, 30%, 40%. Wow, that's horrible in terms of shielding an attack. You only shield 30% of the time. Well, if you look at once we start getting into the rotation, you're going to see what happens to those numbers and how they go up and fly out the roof here. Now, in terms of gear, okay, so here's the first way that tanks can go. The first rule of thumb for tanks is you have to be alive, correct? And the way to be alive is either take in the damage and deal with it, or completely avoid attacks. Now, I personally think, my personal opinion here, I'm going to show you all the ways you can do this, but my personal opinion is endurance is the best. I'm sorry, endurance increases your health. Now what I'm going to be doing on my tank is, as you can see as I go down my armor, endurance aug. Okay? Endurance aug on the next piece. And endurance aug, right? I'm stacking endurance on my character. And the reason why I'm stacking endurance is, one, I'll have a shit ton of HP. Okay? And that is what I want. I want a lot of health points. Now some may say, what about damage mitigation? That's all well and dandy. It's all nice to have your absorbing damage and dodging attacks with defense chance and all that. So that's really cool, but that's all relying on chance. You see what I'm saying? You're relying on the chance that you're going to absorb and shield an attack. That's pretty lame, if you ask me. Like, I don't want to rely on my shield or my dodging. You know, I want it to be there. That's beautiful, so I can actually dodge sometimes. But I really want it to. I want to be in control, especially in PvP. You want to be in control of of your character and your situation. So here we go. So here's how as you can see, how this works is shield chance is the chance that you have of your shield activating, and shield absorption is how much damage you'll absorb. So if it has this has about 30% chance to activate, and your shield will absorb about 40. Okay, that's pretty good. I mean, like, that's almost 50% of an attack. If someone hits you for 10k, they're only gonna it's only 5k is gonna really hurt you. Damage reduction here. That's just based on your armor. And now here's the kicker with assassins. This is where, so the other things I've been talking about so far are for generally in tanks, because all tanks have these stats. Now assassins, we have a one big if here. We have light armor. You see that? See, that's the thing. All the other tanking classes in the game use heavy armor, we use light. Now some may say you might be a worse tank. You're about to see why we're not bad tanks. And what happens here is this is only it's about a 40% damage reduction from, you know, all the different types of attacks. But since everyone has a base accuracy of 100% now, this really doesn't have a big deal. It comes into play more in PvE, but not so much in PvP anymore. So here we go. So after stacking endurance, I'm stacking HP for my PvP gear and all that. So we get down to shield chance and shield absorb. And basically these are the main ones. Defense chance, okay. Here's my thing with defense chance. Stacking defense chance is really, really risky. Because here's the thing, if you stack defense chance, you're not going to have a lot of endurance. And you're not going to be absorbing blows with your shield. You're going to be relying on complete dodges. It's going to be like all or nothing scenario. And what I mean by that is, like, either you're going to completely move out of the way, or you're going to take that hit, and you're not going to have a lot of endurance, and this puts a lot of pressure on your healer. You also have to think about the people in your group and how much pressure you're putting on them. You shouldn't be a liability in a group. You should not be. Okay? So, that's what defense chance is, and I personally say don't go this route. Because this route is... It's okay. I'm sure there's going to be someone who's going to come out here and be like, I run defense chance. You know, but that's fine. That's fine and dandy. But I'm giving my argument for why I don't recommend, especially new tankers, people who want to tank, I highly recommend endurance. Endurance is just the way to go. So, now that you've seen the gear, basically, and it's just basically your relics, of course. Shielding an incoming attack grants 479 absorption rating. You want that, the relic of shield amplification. And you want the fortunate reboot, which means incoming attacks have 30 to grant 30 defense rating for 6 seconds. It has 857 defense rating. So what's really sweet about this is, one, these are basically the tank relics. And by the way, you want 2 different relics. Okay, there's no endurance relics. That's why I have those 2. You want 2 relics because they don't stack. Like if this is absorption and this is absorption, it's not going to work. They're both sharing a cooldown. So you want 2 different things that are using 2 different cooldowns. Okay? Fair enough. That's pretty easy to comprehend. So yeah, those are the stats. Those are the 3 stats you're managing, and that's what they do. Shield chance, your chance to shield. Shield absorb, how much you can absorb when your shield activates. So this is really reliant on this. And defense chance is your chance to dodge. And then damage reduction is based on your armor. And then your armor rating is your armor rating, you know, versus attacker of same level. So it's reducing the damage. And then of course, don't run in PvE gear into PvP. That's kind of natural as a tank because you will get wrecked. If you're with PvE gear in a PvP situation, you are going to get destroyed. DPS can get away with it, but tanks cannot. Healers cannot. Okay? So here's, as you can see, look at all this. Damage reduction from players by 35%. That's really important. You know? And then healing boost, and of course every single other thing is boosted. Okay? That's really, really, really important. And as you can see, I'm a 62 Valor, so I've done quite a bit of PvP on this spec. Now, alright? That's the gear. Okay, the gear is right there. It's pretty straightforward. There's one vendor. Okay. Now, let's get into the skill tree. This is probably the most important part for the tank. Okay. Now, as you can see, you can follow this line. You can follow it, and you're just gonna follow it, right? That's how the leveling works in this game. Now, the utilities that I took are here. Okay, so Shapeless Spirit is the first utility I took. It reduces all damage taken while stunned. SWTOR is a very stun heavy game. Every single class has a stun. Okay? Every single one does. This is really useful. You reduce it by 30% and plus the damage reduction you already have based on your gear and your procs and all that good stuff. It stacks up very nicely for defense. I've seen a merc hit me with his Heat Seeker, which is normally an 18 to 20k hit. Reduce that shit down to 4k when I was stunned. I felt I was stronger when I was stunned. It was pretty sweet. The next passive, Insulation, increases your armor rating by 30% while lightning charge or surging charge is active. In addition, targets you guard gain insulation when you take damage, increasing their damage reduction by 1%. This effect stacks up to 3 times. It cannot occur more than once every 10 seconds. Okay? So what this is now, as you can see, lightning charge or surging charge. Wait a minute, that's not what the tank uses. That's the first part of this is useless. The second part is awesome. Okay, if you're guarding a healer, and I'll explain what guard is in just 2 minutes. If you put guard on them, their damage reduction gets increased over time. You know, as you're doing your as it keeps stacking insulation, and they keep getting it. So they're getting all those perks. This is a team-oriented perk that you can get, and trust me, as a tank, you need a squad. You will not be 1v3 in this game, and those of you who say you do, you're not playing very good people. I'm just saying. Okay, and right here, this is debatable. This is debatable. I took Lambaste, which is basically increases the damage dealt by lacerate by 25%. And lacerate is like a thing where your guy spins with his lightsaber, it's a little AoE. Okay, it's a melee ranged AoE. And the reason why I take this is, for one, in PvE, this has great uses when trying to keep a whole group under control and keeping your aggro up. Because if you have snipers, marauders, or even mercs in your raid group, they're gonna steal that aggro. If you can't keep them on you. And lacerate is a nice way to get a little AoE damage, keep them all around you, and basically you spam it if you're trying to keep everyone's attention if needed. Now, here's the debatable part. What else people could take? Let's see. This is pretty useless. Let's see. You can take this too. Now, I would recommend that if you're having a real tough time, and by the way, this guide's gonna go over PvP and PvE. So if you have snaring slashes here, right? This is a nice ability. What it does is basically reduces movement speeds of targets they damage by 30% for 6 seconds. And basically Thrash is your filler in this spec, okay? So here we go. this is the thing. It's one of these two that you want to take. If you feel people are running away from you and they keep getting away, which they shouldn't, you have force pull on a tank. Then use this if you're struggling with that. Okay. Next thing, increases the duration of Force Shroud by 2 seconds and Force Speed by 0.5 seconds. And Force Shroud is extremely important, okay? As you can see, hold on, let me just close this right here. Force Shroud. Purges all hostile removable effects and increases your chance to resist force and tech attacks by 200%. This is for 5 seconds. This basically makes you immune to damage. Now, it's normally at 3 seconds. And if you take this perk up, you now have 2 more seconds where you are invulnerable to damage, essentially, to force and tech attacks, like I said, which means that a Marauder, this will not really help you against a Marauder who's a Carnage spec, because he'll be using a lot of basic weapon damage. Okay, so that's another thing we're... And I love this one too. Immersion. Force Speed grants immersion, removing all movement impairing effects and granting immunity to them for duration. If this is so essential in PvP more than PvE, okay? It's just really, really useful, because that way you're literally, for a moment, no one can root you, and there'll be people who don't pay attention and they'll keep trying to root you. They'll keep trying to root you, and they realize too late that it's not working, and you're just tanking. You know, you're kicking ass. Okay, then we hop down to the heroic section. Mass Mind Control provides Assassin's Shelter to all allies within range, excluding yourself, reducing the damage they take by 5% for the next 6 seconds, and healing them for 1609 health, 1609 health over the duration. This is an awesome team ability right here. Now what this does is, now remember, when I explain the mechanics real quick after I get down the skill tree with PvP. Actually, you know what? I'll explain the skill. I'll finish the skill tree and then I'll explain the PvP mechanics first. Okay. Then I have Phantom Stride. Can be used while immobilized and purges movement impairing effects when used. Basically, my teleport, you can't affect me unless you do a hard stun. Your roots will not work. Okay. Now, let's explain the mechanics of PvP tanking versus PvE tanking. Now this is extremely important with this spec, because I find the Juggernauts and stuff, the Juggernauts and power techs, they can deal with it. But you have to really understand your tank as a Sith Assassin. It's not a simple endeavor. This is a tougher tank to play, okay? And some may argue, some may disagree, blah blah blah, whatever. This is for me, what I've personally seen, I've tanked with all the classes, this is the hardest tank to play. But it's also the most rewarding. Okay. Now here we go. Let's see. So I'm not going to go over all the passives on this skill tree. It's really not necessary. I mean, you can read them if you're playing this game, and they're pretty obvious. My rotation will stick out here. So, all right. So let me explain the mechanics for PvE and PvP. We'll start with PvP. PvP aggro doesn't work like PvE. For example, just because I taunt another player online, he's not going to start attacking me. Okay, it doesn't make him switch targets. Okay, that's not how PvP tanking works. How PvP tanking works is when you taunt people in PvP, what happens is for 6 seconds they have the taunt affecting them, and every time they hit someone other than you, that their damage is reduced by 30%. 30%, okay? So you do a damage reduction on them by 30%. So if they hit one of your teammates, 30% of the damage is gone. Just gone. Gone. They don't get it when you taunt people. And that the amount of damage that your taunt absorbs, that amount of damage goes under a protection score in PvP. When you look at your leaderboard at the end of the game, there's a section called protection. This is for tanks. Tanks, you want a high protection. You want to be protecting your team. That's the whole job. And that's what your 2 taunts do. Both of them do this in PvP. Okay, and in PvE it's quite simple. You taunt the enemy at you and he starts fighting you. That's PvE for taunting. But that's how PvP works. Okay? So next section is the rotation here. Now, as I slap on guard, like I was saying, so basically he's been bubbled by guard, and what guard does is every time he gets hit, partial amount of the damage gets transferred to me. And you always want to guard your healer. Don't guard DPSs. Okay? In war zones. In ranked, be on a team and you guys all got your headsets going. And you can communicate. The tank's job is to guard hop to the people who are being focused. But you gotta make sure you got a healer who's on point and paying attention to that shit. Okay? So, now he's protected. This is what I do for my healer. He's protected. Yay. Okay? So here we go. Now, how I open up my rotation is either I like to use force speed to rush in and hit thrash. But let's not start there. Usually what I'll do is what I told you is what I usually do. But what I like to do is, my ideal thing is, I'll see my target. I'll use my phantom stride to get into them. Right next to him. Boom. Thrash. Thrash. It procs small. You know what? Hold on. Yeah. I don't want you. Passive. Passive. Stab it. Stab it. There we go. Okay, I don't need him shooting and irritating me. Okay, so I'll start with Phantom Stride. I'll teleport into them. Okay? Then once I'm next to them, I'll use Thrash. And then Thrash twice. Now Maul has procced, and what this does is, this is basically a backstab for the assassins, but the tank has a passive that allows me to use it right in front of them. Even if I'm in the front, use it on cooldown. See, Thrash, Thrash, then whatever procs you click. Shock, it procs, you hit it. Then you want to Wither after that, and then another Maul. And you want to Thrash, Shock, and then Deprivating Bolts procs. Keep thrashing. Now that is the attack rotation. Now see, that's where what I showed you was the attack. You notice I didn't pop any defensives, and the reason why I didn't do that is because I just wanted to show you my attack. That is my attack rotation. It's thrash, 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 and when these things glow, hit them. Okay, and use Wither on cooldown. Wither, just use it because look what it does. Damage dealt by melee and range attacks is decreased. You're weakening him. You are stopping him from doing more damage. Okay? Now that's really important. Okay? Here's another thing. So after you use Thrash, what you want to be popping is Dark Ward. Okay? And this is basically your shield. This is what makes assassins really, really good tanks. This is what makes up for the lack of heavy armor. So here we go. So what you'll see here is, remember my character sheet. Now you're like, oh, that's a really shit shield chance. You know? When you activate Dark Ward, that shit goes to 47%. Almost half the time you're going to be shielding an attack away. And you want to keep this up. Okay? Every time it comes off cooldown, you click it. That's why I highly recommend key binding it to something. You click it off cooldown and you keep proccing it and you keep proccing it. Now, let's see. You notice it has 15 stacks. Every time you absorb a shield, every time you absorb an attack when Dark Ward is up, a stack goes down. It goes from 15 to 14 all the way down to 0. Now, I've never hit below 10 because before you even get down to 10, I keep it up. Just like this. Just keep it up. That's all I do, and I'm constantly going to be able to keep up the ward over and over again. And it lasts for about 20 seconds. So if you read what it does, it surrounds you in a dark ward with 15 charges that increase your shield chance by 15% for 20 seconds. Each time you successfully shield, Dark Ward loses a charge, and it does not break stealth. So that means as this tank has an advantage of stealth, you can activate Dark Ward while you're invisible, and then open up. And then use Maul. And then use Lightning, Wither, Thrash, Shock, Deprivating Bolts. Put up the ward again. Shock, Wither, Thrash, Thrash, Shock, Deprivating Bolts. It's a very, very, very nasty combo. And another thing that to keep in mind for what tanks got that other things do not, and that is Spike. Spike is basically a stun. It's literally an extra stun. We got Spike to stun, we got Electrocute to stun, Shock can stun NPCs. We got Whirlwind, and we even got our Escape. Like, let's say you don't have a healer on your squad. Slap down one of these. You're fighting. You know, you're fighting. Like, let's say I'm fighting. Oh no, I'm getting fucked. Just back out. Just back out of it real quick, and there you go. And that's what you would do. Now, as you can see, the rotation is quite simple. Use thrash until things proc. Now some would say, where did the complications come in? Like, as a tank, like what? You said this is a hard tank. It's not hard. You just click glowing, whatever glows in front of you, and keep Wither up and your ward up, and that's about it. The hard part is when you're being attacked. You have to understand what classes you are playing. Now, this is going to be really hard for me to just show on a computer. You know, I'd have to, like, play tons of war zones until that situation comes, like, you know, for each thing, you know. And that's extremely difficult, you know. And what I like to do is sometimes, if you have an opportunity, plant Crushing Darkness on them, you know, in an attack, and then start thrashing, then prop your shield up, then hit Maul, then hit Shock, then put Wither down, thrash again, and keep moving like this. Always got to keep moving. Keep your target off balance. Test if he's even a really good player. Just hop around him. Put my ward back up. Maul, Shock, Wither. Keep hitting him. Oh, and then slap a Discharge. Discharge does melee and ranged accuracy decrease. So now I've decreased his damage with Wither, and I've decreased his accuracy. So this is really nice that people have 100% accuracy and they rely heavily on it now, so that you can actually reduce them below that. So what happens is it goes there, Maul, Shock, Saber Ward, not Saber Ward, sorry, Dark Ward, Wither, Deprivating Volts, Discharge, Shock, Maul, Ward back up. If you have a chance, put up Crushing Darkness, Shock, thrash, Maul, Wither, and you'll never run out of force. Like, I mean, like, look at this. I mean, the force is just staying here in general, and if you use one light attack, like 2 light attacks, look, I'm already back to full force. Return to Maul, Dark Ward, and then boom, that is the rotation right there, ladies and gentlemen. That is it. That is all you got to do. And now the hard part is being situationally aware. Now I highly recommend is don't play your tank like a default camera like this. I believe this is default camera. Back it up. You know, you want, okay, so now here comes the concepts of tanking here. Now I've shown you the rotation, I've shown you the skill sets, and look at this guy trying out his things. I've shown you all the skill sets, I've shown you what you're supposed to do in general, but not every fight goes the way you want it to. And you have to understand how to play each class. And what I mean by that is, this class requires a really strong understanding of its DCDs and how to use them. Okay, so what I like to do is, when I go into a fight and I see 2 players there, let's go over the DCDs. You have Force Shroud, which makes you immune to damage. You have Deflection, which increases your ranged and melee defense by 50% for 15 seconds. Basically, you are absorbing a ton of attacks. At this point, you reduce all damage down to almost nil. I've seen people hit me for like 400 at 65, and that's nothing, you know. You got that. You have what I like to use Overcharge Saber for, as you can read it. It's kind of like a little passive that you can activate, I guess you could say, for a short time. Let's see, if you overcharge your lightsaber charge for 15 seconds, immediately restoring 15% of your max health. So for a tank, this is like a self-heal. Immediately restoring 15% of your max health, increasing the damage of all charges by 50%. So that dot that your attacks put on people as a tank, it increases that damage by 50%, and then increases the chance to trigger their effects by 25%, and healing you for 1,532 when your effects are triggered. So basically, for a tank, this is a self-heal. This is your version of self-healing, and it lasts for 15 seconds, and that's all it does. It's basically a self-heal. That's the most important part. Understand your med packs. These ones reduce the damage you take. This one actually heals you. Use stealth. Use stealth. It's very, very important. If you feel enemies are ranged, pull them towards you with force pull. As you can see, you can't move a practice dummy. But that is tanking here for Sins, right there. That is the tank guide. If you have any more questions, just leave them in the comments. Like and subscribe if you like this guide. If you want me to be more clear on things, you can, because I do feel like I kind of did bounce around a little bit when it came to the rotation. But if you think about it, the rotation is really not a rotation, though. It's a priority system. It's like a healer. You're prioritizing what you need to use. If you feel like 5 dudes are looking at you and about to fire, don't use deflection yet. Use Force Shroud. You know, just totally mitigate that damage. Just be like, damage out of the way. That's what you should do. Okay, this gives your healer a chance to get ready. This gives your DPS a chance to get some DPS on the guys. It just buys you time. 5 seconds of where you basically can't be touched. Unless someone's using very, very specific attacks. But then again, even if they are using those specific attacks, if you're gearing properly, you should be stacking defense. Sorry, not defense, endurance. Stack endurance so you have a lot of HP to take those blows. And then absorb when you need to. So it works out real good. So this is my tank guide. If you guys want to see other class guides I'll be putting up, just let me know which ones you want to see. I'll be putting up a Merc guide soon. Hope you enjoyed it. Deuces.